What's up, everybody? This is Clint back with the Die Hard MMA podcast for odds.com. We are talking UFC Fight Island number 6. We're breaking down everything from a totals perspective. This is total madness. We're going overs, unders. That's about it. We're going to talk about these fights from a total perspective and work our way through the entire card. Let's go ahead and kick this thing off. We start our night with Faraziam taking on Jamie Malarkey. The total here is set at 2.5. Over is -170. Under is +150. This one is going to be one that I suggest most people stay off of. If I had to make a pick, I'm going to go ahead and blindly say that I'll take the under at 2.5, simply because both of these fighters are young, they are improving, they are talented, and they have both taken roughly a year off. I expect to see new tricks, new wrinkles. They're going to have a hard time preparing for one another because they don't really know what the other one brings to the table after a full year's worth of improvements. So I would say under. Someone probably gets finished, but again, it's basically a leap of faith. I'm not actually going to go ahead and bet that one. Let's move right along. Mark Striegel taking on Said Nurmagomedov. This is a total set at 2.5. The over is -235. The under is +195. And honestly, this is an under that has me a little bit tempted here. So Mark Striegel, he's a great grappler. He really puts people down, physically powerful, very strong, athletic, and he's got a hell of a squeeze on him. Said Nurmagomedov is a very, very talented striker, very creative with his different striking attacks, fully capable of knocking people out, and a solid wrestler himself. Now, Mark's path to victory really is the grappling here. He's got to get Nurmagomedov down to the floor, and on the flip side of that, Said needs to keep this fight standing. And more than likely, I feel like this is going to end up being striker versus grappler. Whoever keeps it in their world is going to have a significant advantage. And because of that under 2.5, it doesn't seem so bad. If Mark can get it to the floor, maybe he wins by submission. If Mark cannot get it to the floor, there's a chance here he gets knocked out. So I would need to look at the under, especially getting that nice juicy line at +195. Antogulov taking on Maxime Grisham. We have a total set at 1.5 on this one. The over is +105. The under is -125. Now, my man Lock of the Night, and I broke this down on the podcast on Monday. Under is really the only way you can look here. Antogulov has about 2 minutes of cardio in him. He is a kill or be killed fighter. He looks to take his opponents down once they are there. He has a solid submission game on him, but once that time period of about 2 minutes passes by, he's got no gas left in the tank. I would look for Maxime Grisham to turn the tables on him and put him away at the end of the first round or the early second round if this thing doesn't get closed out with a submission from Antogulov in about the first minute of the fight. That under 1.5 at -125 I think is perfectly reasonable, and honestly, that's one that I'm targeting and potentially going to be betting. Give me a follow at Die Hard MMA Pod on Twitter. That's where I tweet out all of my official action, so whenever I actually pull the trigger and put my money where my mouth is, that's where you'll find the announcement. John Phillips taking on Jung Park. We have a total once again here. You know what? I lied. They've only got the fight goes to decision prop out on this one. It doesn't look like the total is out for whatever reason. So we've got fight goes to decision, meaning it completes 3 full rounds. At +155, fight does not complete 3 full rounds at -195. Essentially what they're saying here is somebody's going to sleep. Now, John Phillips is the white Mike Tyson. This man has massive, massive power in his hands. He wins by knockout more often than, well, really anything else. That's what he does. Jung Park, he's a brawler. He's someone who's willing to stand and trade. He mixes his grappling in there, but he's not much of a submission artist. This is one that I can absolutely see John Phillips getting an opponent who's willing to stand and bang with him, or somebody who he's able to get out from under to get this fight back to standing. The question is whether or not he lands that knockout bomb. I don't know if Park has the submission ability to actually put Phillips away, and he definitely doesn't have the knockout ability to put Phillips away. This is a sneaky one where I would be leaning more over than I would be under. We'll see where they drop this line, because as of right now, there isn't one out there. If it's a 1.5, I'm expecting more than likely a 2.5. But even with the 2.5, over would be very, very tempting at a juicy plus line. Jillian Robertson taking on Pauliana Botello. The total here set at 1.5. Over is -145. Under is +125. And this is another striker versus grappler matchup. It really depends on who you think is going to implement their game. Now, Jillian Robertson sells out for that takedown. Once she gets it on the floor, she is a wicked Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She can submit anybody in the division. She can do it in record time, especially when you've got someone like Botello who just seems to be a fish out of water on the floor. Jillian has a really easy path to victory for herself here. Now, Pauliana Poliana Botelho, if she can keep this fight standing, if her defense has improved, if she can manage to force Jillian Robertson to stay on the feet with her. We have seen Jillian wilt on the feet. Now, she's been working on her striking. Obviously, that's a hole in her game that she's attempting to patch, but we have seen her go down, get TKO'd when she just can't control where the fight takes place. I'm expecting this fight to finish. However, the 1.5 has me a little bit sketched out here. We saw in Jillian Robertson's last fight that she really wanted a TKO on her record. So she took her opponent down and she stayed on top of her and she took every opportunity she could to swing at her, but the defense was too much. She wasn't quite able to pull it off. And late in round 3, her corner finally said, forget it, just choke her out. And she choked her out like that. So Jillian Robertson can finish this fight on the mat really whenever she wants to, but it's all about her mental state. Is she looking to make a statement? If so, she comes in with the submission. She probably finishes this thing in the first round. If she doesn't, or if she can't get this fight to the mat, Poliana Botelho may take a little time to get the finish, and it could creep over that 1.5. If I'm forced to make a pick, I'm going to say under 1.5. I think Jillian Robertson is improving and maturing, and I expect her to get the takedown relatively easily and then put this thing away. So I'm going to say under 1.5, but it's a total that I'm maybe not overly interested in playing. The fight doesn't go to decision prop, however, at -195. I think that's completely playable, and honestly, it's probably even parlayable because one of these women is kill or be killed. We've got Guram, I'm not going to try and pronounce his, okay, Guram Kutateladze, too many letters there, taking on Mateusz Gamrot. Now, Gamrot is a really hyped prospect from outside of the UFC, making his UFC debut. We're excited to see what this kid can do, and Guram is a kind of guy that can never be counted out. Guram is the type of fighter with that fight-ending power he can unleash at any point in time, and honestly, he gets more dangerous when he's hurt. Now, a fighter like Gamrot is a methodical striker, a patient striker, someone who will sit on the outside. He'll rock you over and over and over, and eventually, when you can't take it anymore, then he goes for the kill. He never rushes it. So with this fight, I think there's more than likely a finish, but it's a matter of when it takes place. The total is set at 2.5 here, over at -210, under at +175. I would be tempted in the under here. However, Gamrot by decision is totally in play in this fight if he has no sense of urgency as far as finishing Guram goes. But if he clips Guram early, I could see this one ending in the second round, whether it's Guram going nuts and landing a big bomb, or it's Guram going nuts and then getting clipped and finished on the other side of this thing. Claudio Silva taking on James Krause. We've got another 2.5 total here. The over is -135. The under is the under is +115. So we've got a slight juice to the over, and I kind of understand why. Essentially, when you're picking a total here, you're basically picking a fighter. Now, Claudio Silva is a world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He can take down and choke out anybody in the world, but that is really his only path to victory. His striking is rudimentary and, for lack of a better way to put it, bad. So his serviceable striking, all it does is close the distance and get him within reach of his opponents. James Krause is a very intelligent fighter who's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt himself. He will be able to more than likely keep this fight standing and piece Claudio Silva apart. It's a matter of whether or not he will finish Silva on the feet to see if he can contribute to that under 2.5 cashing. So more than likely, I'm saying James Krause plays it safe, sticks and moves, stays on the outside. Yes, he could finish Claudio Silva with strikes. It's possible. Claudio is getting older. However, James Krause more than likely wins this fight by decision, in my opinion, and Claudio Silva wins this fight by submission more often than not. Claudio can win by decision. Very razor-thin margin for him to be able to do that, but it's possible. And Krause can win by knockout. So there's a chance for this fight to go under the under 2.5 at +115. Not a bad spot, but again, I've got this strange feeling that Krause keeps this thing on the feet, moves around, and gets himself to a decision win because he doesn't want to engage in the ground game of Claudio Silva. So I'm going to go ahead and pass on that one. That one's a complete pass for me. I have no interest in playing that total. Jonathan Martinez and Thomas Almeida. This is another one that we really have little to no information. The total set at 2.5. Under 2.5 is -125, and the over 2.5 is +105. Thomas Almeida is 1-3 in his last 4 fights. We haven't seen him for 2 years. Jonathan Martinez is on a hot streak, but he's fought essentially bums. This is a big, big, big step up for Jonathan Martinez, and it's arguably a step down for Thomas Almeida. However, we don't know what we're going to get out of him after 2 years. There's a chance that Thomas Almeida puts his grappling to work here and basically grinds out a decision. If these guys go to war, both of them are excellent strikers. There's a chance this thing goes under. I think the under 2.5, again, without information, that's the way I'm going to have to look, even at minus 125. But another total that I really have no intention of betting, simply because there is no solid information for me to go off of to make an educated guess on how that fight is going to finish. Jimmy the Brute Crute taking on Modestas Bukauskas. We've got a total set at 1.5 here for these light heavyweights, and this is a fight that I'm really excited about watching. This is probably one of the must-see fights on the card for me, maybe the one I'm most excited about besides the main event. We've got the total 1.5, over plus 105, under minus 125. These 1.5 totals are tricky. So Jimmy has finished his last 4 fights by first round finish, and then he had 1 third-round finish against Paul Craig. However, that was a grappling heavy fight, not something I expect to see here. Modestas Bukauskas is in his second UFC fight here. He got a early second round finish in his last fight after basically defending the takedowns of his opponents and then going to work with elbows. And I think it was actually between rounds that the fight got called off. So we don't have a lot of information on how Modestas is going to do in the UFC. However, what we know is he can get back to his feet. He gives up takedowns, unfortunately, but he knows how to stay safe. He knows how to defend himself on the floor, finds his way to the cage, gets himself back up. Big, strong guy, good gas tank, and he's going to be able to have a size and reach advantage on Jimmy Crute here. I think this one's going to squeeze over. I know Jimmy has a nasty habit of knocking people down and choking them out in the very first round. However, I think Modestas he's the real deal. I think this kid belongs in the UFC. I think he's going to give Jimmy a run for his money here. And I think he has the opportunity to stretch Jimmy out. Even if he gives some takedowns, he's going to make the Brute work. He's going to use that cage. He's going to get back up. And I think he's got a good enough submission defense game that he's not just going to be thrown around and then immediately choked out in the very first round. I think this one gets to round 2 and potentially even round 3. I would be taking a look at that over at plus 105 because even once Modestas has the opportunity to go to work striking, Jimmy's not a fish out of water, and we've seen he's had relatively decent cardio. So really, if you're betting on that under, I think the only thing you're betting on is some kind of flash knockout happening, which I don't really see taking place. I think Modestas is going to have to work a little bit harder to get that kind of a finish. Or you're betting on Jimmy Crute to get an early submission. That one is more likely. That's where the public knowledge and information, everyone thinks Jimmy's going to get a very, very early finish and submission here. But you might as well take Jimmy Crute by submission if that's the way you're betting it, rather than taking the under 1.5. So I would think this one squeezes over. Probably not going to bet it. Again, a very, very dicey situation, but that's the way I'd look. We've got the co-main event here. Jessica Andrade taking on Katlyn Chookagian. We've got the total set at 1.5. Over is minus 435. Under is plus 303. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this one. As we know, most women fights go to the over. I expect this one to make it to the judges' scorecards. We've got Jessica Andrade coming up a weight class, and we've got Katlyn Chookagian, who's one of the top contenders, having a massive size and reach advantage. I expect Chookagian to stick and move, and I think she wins this fight via decision. That's what I'm expecting to see happen. Jessica Andrade is a little monster. However, it is extremely hard to finish Katlyn Chookagian, so I don't know if she's got the ability to do that up a weight class. We'll find out on Saturday. If you do think that Jessica Andrade has the opportunity to finish, go ahead and look under. Why not? We do have the total at 2.5. I apologize. I quoted the 1.5. Obviously, that was an alternate line. I messed up there. The 2.5 line is over minus 245. Under is plus 205. That's a spot where if you think Jessica Andrade comes out and gets the finish, you're basically betting on her to do so at plus 205 because Katlyn Chookagian doesn't finish anybody. So if you're betting minus 245, both these women can win a decision. If you're betting plus 205 on the under 2.5, that's essentially just saying that Andrade is going to land a bomb and get her on the floor, choke her out, or TKO her. The co-main event of Ante Delija and Cyril Gane, unfortunately, is off. Ante had some issues with the PFL. Apparently, he's still under contract with them, and they pulled kind of a shady move to keep him off the UFC's card this week, and I'm very, very upset about losing that fight. Main event time, we've got Brian Ortega taking on the Korean zombie Chan Sung Jung. We've got a total here. We've got all of them on this one, so I'm going to go through everything, right? We've got a total set at 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5, so why don't we just break them all down? The main total you're going to see is the 2.5 rounds. Over is plus 100, even money. Under is minus 120. What I'm expecting here is a measured fight from these guys. Brian Ortega has been out for about 2 years. We're supposed to be seeing a reinvigorated Brian 2.0. Now, Ortega can finish this fight at any time from any place. He can dive on submissions. He grabs people's necks. He doesn't really have a great wrestling game, so he relies on those scrambles and those opportunities to get on people and force the submission game from that aspect. Unless he's been wrestling for the last 2 years, which I don't expect, I don't think that much of that is going to change. I think we'll see an evolution of his striking, and he'll look to stay on the feet a little bit more with the Zombie. Now, the Zombie we know is a phenomenal striker, very talented, very technical, and he's got big power on the feet. However, Ortega's got a hell of a chin on him, and we've seen Jung in some serious wars. We've seen him go deep. 5 rounds with Yair Rodriguez. We saw him in round 4 with Jose Aldo way back in the day. So even though these guys can finish quick and finish early, they're also no stranger to wars. And based on what I've heard in their interviews, especially Brian Ortega, he seems like he's buckled up and ready to go for a all-out battle, not something he's expecting to end quickly or early. So for me, I'm looking at the over 2.5 here, especially getting plus 100. These main events have a tendency of not finishing super early and squeezing over those totals. This isn't a 40-year-old Frankie Edgar fighting at the wrong weight class that the Zombie is facing. This is a reinvigorated, rested, and improved Brian Ortega that he's facing. I think the Zombie is going to have to essentially batter him before he gets that finish. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened late, or even if it was another doctor stoppage like the Max Holloway fight was. The danger of playing the overs, like I said, is some kind of a flash knockout from one of these guys, because both of them are capable, and then a submission from Brian Ortega. However, Jung is extremely intelligent. He's got a high fight IQ. I think he's going to know better than to engage with Brian Ortega on the floor. And unless he gets rocked by something and then choked out, which again, I have a hard time seeing happening, I think this fight is going to get deeper. So one angle that I might want to take on this one is a fun little way to sweat the main event, especially if you don't feel like playing either fighter. Bet every single over. You lay the wood on the over 1.5. That one should hit. You get a slight plus money, even money on the over 2.5. I like that bet. That one might actually be a legitimate bet for me. And then you're getting plus 152 on the over 3.5, and then plus 203 on the over 4.5. So essentially this thing snowballs. Chop your unit up into 4 pieces and see if you can make it all the way to the judges' scorecards. The longer the fight goes, the bigger the payout. It's a real fun way to play the main events. My main bet here would be the over 2.5, obviously, if you're looking for a single pick, a single bet. But I might actually chop it up and do all 4 of the overs on this one, because I do think this fight goes late. I do think this fight gets deep. That's Total Madness for UFC Fight Island 6. Good luck on all your action this weekend, everybody. Give me a follow at DieHard MMA Pod on Twitter. As always, make sure you like and share, subscribe to Odds HQ. Check out odds.com, where I have articles breaking down all the fights out. Thank you all for everything, and we will see you Saturday.